Welcome. So let's talk about the solutions for GS paper 3 2019. Now here we would be focusing on the very first question that talks about GST. Now GST has been important topic since last 2-3 years. We have already covered a detailed lecture on GST, and here it was very direct question, so you have to divide your answers under the taxes being taken by the center and the taxes being taken by the state. So you have to enumerate the list of indirect taxes, so you can classify it as collected by center, collected by state. So state, we can say it's VAT, value added tax. Then you have the entertainment tax, octroi duty, talking about the purchase tax, luxury tax. Then you have taxes on lottery that is seen. So all those come under the state tax. Under the center tax, you mainly had the excise. So this was a very important component which is subsumed under GST. Now service tax, which was part of your central tax. Then you had the countervailing duty. Customs, that was again very important, have been part of your GST. Now also comment on the revenue implications of GST. Now you have to, for questions like this, it's good if you can produce a little of statistics and data. So you might be able to provide the data for 2017, 18 and 19, a comparative analysis. If you are able to do that, it's not required that you do it in exact figures, but if you are able to do it even to approximations and mention the source from where you have cited it, it makes your answer really impressive. So over the years we have seen that the GST collection has been falling. There has been a declining trend that has been seen. An improvement in the tax to GDP ratio is what is required for a better growth. The next is, do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation have left an Indian economy in good shape? Now, as of now, what we are facing is definitely a high inflation which has been detrimental to the economic scenario. What would be the best case under which people would be spending? The idea is to bring in much more policy stabilities so that there is much more investment grounds. When there are better investment grounds, you would have more money into circulation, and ultimately when you have higher currency into circulation, more money into circulation, what would happen is the economic scenario would grow well, and there would be higher GDP growth that would be registered. Now what could be done? Maintaining a below average level of fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit should not zoom up like anything. Talking about improving the urban economies, focusing on the consumption demand, how the patterns for the consumption demand have been changing over the years, bringing in much more equitable distribution. So all those help to make an economy at a better stake. Now what are the ways that government can help doing this? First of all is to increase liquidity. More money into circulation means better growth opportunities. Higher public expenditure, that would happen only when the inflations are curtailed, and that would make people spend more amount into other activities, and that would be beneficial to the economy. Now over the past few months, we have witnessed there has been a drastic increase in the inflationary scenario. Because of that, you have a severe pressure onto the economy, and this is a kind of vicious cycle that occurs, where you have inflation that goes up, which brings impact to the economy. People don't spend unnecessarily, ultimately affecting the economy again, which finally leads to further higher prices. And that was where you had cases of hyperinflation, which was seen in Bolivia, in Zimbabwe, and the financial crisis that was registered in America. Now what should be very important here is to promote labor intensive industries. Once you have more labor intensive industries which are promoted, be it food processing, leather industries, this would give a thrust and an employment to the youth, and that would again help in increasing the GDP. The next is integrated farming system and its utility in sustainable agricultural production. So whenever we are talking about integrated farming system, it's an approach where we are focusing on efficient, sustainable cropping patterns, better resource management that could be seen. So maintaining livestock, agriculture, vermicomposting, organic farming all together under one head. So what are the key features we look for? First is higher productivity. So production. The second important idea is profit motive. The third important idea is sustainability, whether the thing that you are doing is sustainable for long run or not. Recycling, if can be done, it is very, very beneficial to the agricultural land. You have better utilization of small land parcels that are seen. Those could be much more efficiently used. If there is a fodder crisis, that could be met because there is an integrated farming system. If you are only producing, what would happen is the fodder would keep on accumulating. There would be no livestock to have it. So if it is a balance, there would be no fodder excess or no fodder surplus or no fodder crisis that would be seen. Again, employment, which is the key focus that we always talk about, is something that is must. The next is impact of national watershed project and increasing agriculture production from water stressed areas. Now, before we begin, understand what is watershed. So watershed is an area drained by the river and its tributary. So this is a river and the tributary. So this is a watershed area. We have covered a separate lecture on watershed management where we have also focused about the initiatives of Anna Hazare. Now here, what the idea is, when you have a water stressed area, if you have a better watershed planning, you would have more groundwater recharge that would take place. So let's say the ground level was, if this was the ground level, this would jump up to a higher level. Once it is to a higher level, there would be better productivity, better cropping systems that could be introduced. Soil moisture would increase. Once the soil moisture increases, you would have more availability of the water, and the water stressed areas would automatically work well. Bangalore, Telangana are some of the very good examples where these watershed projects have been very, very successful. The idea is to mitigate the adverse impacts of the climate change that is occurring, bring in successful water planning, and be it community participation, be it people's awareness. Tarun Bharat Sangh TBS is a good example where you have lot of johars that were made as a part of the mission of TBS in the regions of Alwar and Rajasthan. Now, those are some of the case studies that you have to bring, and Rajendra Singh was awarded Magsaysay Award for the same. The next is the contribution of M. Vishweshwarya and M.S. Swaminathan. Now, two different persons, one from engineering and one from agriculture. So, Swaminathan is supposed to have bring in the agricultural revolution in India, mainly the green revolution. So you had a sudden jump in the vegetation that was registered. He was a scientist who had lots of groundbreaking works on genetics, talking about cytogenetics, radiation, chemical mutations. So all those studies were something that were taken into account, and the whole focus was right to food. Every individual should have the right to food. So Swaminathan's work have been very, very important. He was also the head and the chairman of the National Commission of Farmers back in 2004, and he did numerous works to curb the issue of farmer suicide in India. Talking about M. Vishweshwarya, he was one of the leading personalities who focused on construction. Construction of Krishnaraj Sagar Dam was one of the initiatives that was propounded by him. Water for irrigation, water for agriculture, water for technology, and generation of hydroelectric power were some of his dreams. He focused also on system automated doors that were part of the overflow regions. Flood management was another important idea, but both of them were closely related because his work, Swaminathan's work, was solely on agriculture, and his work was on construction of dam and providing more water for the purpose of agriculture. So both had a huge focus on water resources, and focusing on better fertility, higher crop production. That could be an ultimate objective that could be seen. The next is, what is India's plan to have its own space station, and how will we benefit through our space program? So on Gaganyaan, we had already taken a separate lecture, and while taking that, we believe that this was a very predictable question for your 2019, and here it goes. So Gaganyaan is one of the ideas through which we are planning to have a space station, might be after 5 to 7 years after Gaganyaan is sent. And then the idea is it would be nearly of a weight of 20 tons. missions which would carry or which would be able to keep the astronauts in space for nearly 15 to 20 days. It would be moving around the Earth's orbit above nearly 400 kilometers above the Earth. There would be also mission requirements that would be satisfied after an initial round by Gaganyaan. So deep space exploration, study of other galaxies could be possible once we have a space station. So also commercial engagements with other countries is an essential part of this deep space exploration. Private sector might be encouraged to work for it. The next is coastal sand mining. Now, this has been a very, very debatable and a very, very burning topic, we could say. Coastal sand mining, the impact of higher tracking on Mount Everest, Glacial Lake outbursts. So, those are some of the very upcoming, very prominent topics that have been for environmentalists these days. Again, here we have one more news that was of recent, where you had the collapse of the multi-storied residential building in the regions of Kochi that was registered. What is coastal sand mining? Now, coastal sand mining, what would happen? The most important idea is, because of the sand mining, the waters would enter the nearby villages and there would be subsidence of the villages that could be seen, flooding of the villages. The water might turn brackish because you would have more of ocean water coming into the region. Fish catch would be tremendously reduced because the areas of freshwater regions would just wipe off. This has been highly seen in the areas of Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. A lot of that has been seen in the region of Kolam, Alipuzha, and the exclusive economic zone regulations have come up, where the coastal regulations are very, very important. So any kind of unnecessary construction, unnecessary infrastructure should be taken into should be curbed, because if that is there, you would have a lot of coastal sand mining that would take place. Also, you would have the coastal regulation zones that must be strictly met in the surrounding region. So a very, very important topic for now. The next is vulnerability is an essential element to define disaster impacts and its threat. Now, what is vulnerability? The United Nations Office for the Disaster Risk Reduction talks about the region which is susceptible. Now, how it could be susceptible? There could be various ways in which I can say a region is susceptible. There could be a physical vulnerability that this region would go extinct. There could be an economic vulnerability where there is hand to mouth situation, very, very high risk in the cities which are either very expensive or do not have good infrastructure or good economic backup for the people to feed there. There could be social vulnerability where there are higher amount of crimes, catastrophic condition, the conditions of women and children are at risk. Then you have environmental vulnerability. It could be due to global warming, climate change, impact on the flora and fauna. Amazon rainforest as of now is a very good reason to have anthropogenic causes associated with environmental vulnerability. So we have talked about an Amazon rainforest in a separate lecture, and there is where we focus on the word tipping point, very, very important for your upcoming exam as well. So all these vulnerabilities needs to be systematically understood, conceptualized, and we need to see where actually the risk lies and how we can mitigate it before it occurs. The next is banning of Jamaat-e-Islami in Jammu Kashmir has brought into the focus the role of overground workers. Now, overground workers are those which assist the terrorist organizations in the local region. Now, how do they assist? What are the roles that they have played? They support in the food availability, logistics, planning of terror attacks, talking about coordination with the local stakeholders, corruption within the system which brings in illegal money into the supply chain, and also execution, which is the paramount thing. So whenever you have a terror plan that is chalked out, there is execution that could happen only with the overground workers. What are the measures that can be taken? So that is again important. How do we neutralize this? Now, this is a problem where you have to find out the root cause. Once the root cause is known, you have to alienate the people, segregate the people, isolate them. They could be rehabilitated into camps, or there could be rehabilitation centers where they could be brought about. intelligence networking should be very, very strong. So solid infrastructure for intelligence, better human surveillance, better cooperation, and fast track courts. Because of the fast track courts, what would happen? The long pending cases would just go off and the things could be brought into a much more smoother route. The next is Cyberdome project. Explain how it can be useful to control internet crimes in India. Now, Cyberdome project is a technology brought by Kerala Police Department for excellence in cyber securities and a technology to curb the internet crimes. India has witnessed nearly 450% rise in the cyber crime cases under the IT Act 2000 in last 6 to 7 years only. So there has been a significant increase. Now, when we are talking about digital India, we specifically need to focus on cyber issues, because if we are making people move towards a digital world, it is very, very important. Cyber securities are there. So, collaboration with RBI, bank, payment gateways, wallet groups to tackle any unforeseen financial fraud that could take place. So, let's say wallets or the pays have what they have a limit onto the daily transactions. There could be two-factor authentication, there could be fingerprint authentication. Ransomware is another important thing that needs to be taken into account. So how the Indian computer emergency response team has been working for the same, how successful propagandas can be made, people can be made more aware about the spam emails, the phishing emails that are seen, and bring in much more filtration and cybersecurity systems into India are some of the key aspects for those. So with this, we cover the first 10 questions of your general studies paper 3. We will be covering many more interesting topics. A lot of those we have already covered in our previous lectures. So just go back and watch those lectures for any doubts. You are also free to post those in the comment, and do send us the sample writings. We would be happy to evaluate and send you the changes back. Have a wonderful evening.